Without any further ado, just quick basic introductions here, just so that we understand that we're all on the same page in terms of the definitions and then the terms that we use, so that we can progress and have building blocks along the way. So how would we define GRC, right? Governance, risk, and compliance, right? It's a holistic approach, right? That will help an organization manage, how do we set up policies around what is it that we are supposed to do? How do we manage risk to balance, all the events that are happening within an organization? But also, how do we stay compliant with, the rules and regulations? Every single industry here have some rules and regulations that they need to make sure that they adhere to. So after you understand governance, balancing risk, and compliance activities, why is GRC important? The importance of it helps any organization navigate the complex regulatory issues. Or if we talk through IT issues, IT is pretty pervasive in any organization, and usually there are lots of regulations that come to apply. If you're doing medical information, you have HIPAA rules, you get Sarbanes-Oxley, even though they're less prevalent now. You have, government paperwork reductions, lots of different rules that come and apply depending on your industry. And then that landscape, right, helps mitigate the risk, right? But not only helps mitigate the risk, but also enhances the overall performance for any organization and create resiliency across the organization, making sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes. Because once you fix something and you have a policy around that specific issue, right, next time around, you understand how to mitigate it and how to watch for it. Key objectives, I think, for GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, will help an organization align its strategic processes, right, with the technology and the people. Like, you still have the triad. It's process, people, and technology, right? How do we make sure through process, people, and technology that we have policies around the do's and don'ts? We have a way of managing risk, mechanisms of making sure that not only we identify the risks, but we also manage them. And later in the presentation, we'll talk about the mechanisms of, managing risk, whether you're going to accept the risk, you're going to transfer the risk, or you're going to address it. We'll talk through some of that. But how do we make sure within the organization we stay abreast, have compliance exercises to report to the authorities that we should report to, what our activities are, if there are breaches or no breaches, or if we're able to avoid certain things? How did we do that to maintain integrity within the data within the organization, but also what the organization does and how the organization interacts with all the organizations or the public or their customers? So on the next slide here, just looking at framework in terms of establishing GRC, which is not new, it's been around for a while, right? The key components of GRC. Well, what are the key components? It's a framework. In any framework, you got to look at, governance structure, risk management, compliance, activities, and management of, activities that we have. But how does technology support that? So you have those key components that are still centered around the tripod of processes, people, and technology, right? But how do we do that in terms of governance? How do we do that in terms of processes that we have? How do we do that in terms of policies around those processes? How do we do that in terms of the risks that are present, new risks that are known, unknown risk, and risks that are always emerging, to continue really a dynamic framework? But we also want to look at issues like benefits of GRC. Why should we have to do this, right? In any organization, when you're sitting, whether it's government, private, or nonprofit, why do I have to do GRC, right? But it enhances your decision-making processes. It improves your operational efficiencies, because as you manage risk, right, you understand what's happening, and if that happens, what are the triggers, what are the activities that I need to take in place, that I need to make sure that I'm aware of and I'm looking at, to make sure that you strengthen your stakeholders' trust and the confidence of the public as to any organization who's doing business across the platform, interacting with customers and interacting with other business holders. The organization itself, right? Organizationally, how do we align GRC to the business objectives? Because whatever objectives that we have, right, whether it is the government serving the public, nonprofit bridging the gap between government and private that are in it for profit, right? What are the business objectives that we're trying to achieve? How do we engage stakeholders in those business objectives? And what are the critical success factors that will help us implement so that you can appropriately manage the risk across the organization?